exploring radical, unconditionally connective ways of navigating conscious coupledom. And they are a last festival. I think you guys were involved in our third festival ever, second or third festival ever, almost a year ago now. And they did an amazing topic on relationship boardrooms. So we invited them back here to share on how we can use resources to create relationship boardrooms and other tools. And like they say, to run your relationship like a Fortune 500 kind of relationship. So with that, Jordan and Alexa, welcome to Emergence Festival.
What's up, y'all? Thanks for having us. Thanks for that intro, Chelsea. Stoked to be here. Cool. So I'm thinking that a great way to kick this off could be get into our bodies and out of our brain a little bit. I think there's been quite a day thus far. And so if you can do so safely, if you're not driving or operating other heavy machinery, I invite you to stand up. We're going to tap into the infinite intelligence of this wonderful meat suit. And Alexa's not going to do it because she's boycotting right now. So I'm trying to multitask. So if you can, stand up, and we're going to close our eyes and have just a slight bend in our knees and start to shake a little bit. And so as we're shaking, maybe even let your heels tap the ground so you can literally feel the ground. I love the idea of being grounded, and I love it when it's real, when I can feel it, when it's embodied. So as we're doing this shaking, letting our heels click the ground, we're going to take some super deep breaths. In and out of the mouth and or nose. Just mess around, have fun with it. Deep clearing breaths. Getting high on our own supply. That infinitely free 9902. Damn, it's so good. Starting from our head, we're going to just smack ourselves. So really wake up the body, get the lymphatic system moving and grooving, the blood circulating into our neck. We're going to move down our entire body, our shoulders, our arms, armpits, chest. Continuing to breathe, moving into our stomach and our back, our hips. Say hello to the private parts, give them a little love, back that ass up like Juvenile. I'm talking like give it a good smack. Lots of fat there, it can take it. Moving into the upper thighs, and the knees, and the lower legs, the feet and the toes. And when you get down to the bottom, we're just gonna hang down here for a second. Slowing things down, continuing to take deep breaths with our eyes closed. Just getting a little stretch in our hammies. We don't want to pull no hammies today. And then slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, beginning to rise, no rush. Continue to breathe. Last thing to come up is our head. We're going to put one hand over our hearts, one over our stomach. Just taking a few moments here to really feel gratitude. Not just think about it, not just intellectualize and mentally masturbate about it, but to really actually feel it in our bodies. Feeling the heartbeat, the breath in the belly and the chest. Feeling so grateful for this incredible body, this complex chemistry set that's doing so many things simultaneously that we can never imagine or fathom, and it's just doing its damn thing. Now we're going to think of one specific thing that we're grateful for. It could be a person, it can be an experience, whatever it is. And just give yourself a moment here to be so grateful for that thing, to see it in your mind's eye, to imagine the shit out of it. We're going to take one last deep breath into that gratitude. Let it out the side. Awesome. And for a little extra credit bonus overtime, I double dare you to make the most ridiculous face imaginable directly into the screen. 1, 2, 3, go, I win. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, our little Frenchie joined us for some of that. It was very cute.
Very cute.
Fuck, that feels good. Whew.
I needed that.
You did, didn't you?
I did.
She'd been wound up today. She needed it. I mostly made that up.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll just pop right into it as if we haven't already. We're going to start by just sharing a little bit about ourselves individually and collectively, how we came together in this conscious union. You want to get started, baby?
Telling me who I am.
Who the fudge are you?
Oh, I am Alexa Nicole Martinez.
Soon to be Bowditch.
We're getting married in October.
Come on.
I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I grew up very Catholic-ish, amongst many taboos. Of course, sex was not talked about.
Don't do it or you're going to hell,
Don't
getting
do it.
pregnant or getting an STI.
Exactly, like your correct usage of language there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I graduated high school, thought I was going to go for the American dream like everybody else in my really deep South Louisiana school. And it just didn't play out the way that I originally thought it was going to play out. I thought I was
Shocker.
going to do it just like my older sister, who found her husband senior year of high school. They got married shortly after she graduated college. They started with babies. She was like the perfect model. And I was just a rebel with many causes. And it didn't play out like that for me. I joined cruise ships as an art dealer after getting my degree in science. And then, so it was just all over the place. So I lived on luxury cruise lines on cruise ships for almost 6 years. And through that process of traveling the world, I saw 79 countries. I dated a lot of different types of people. And towards the end of my career on ships, I started writing and speaking and creating community that was around personal development, specifically around sexual personal development, because I realized over time that no matter how much I put into my personal development, the more traditional route of personal development, it didn't really seem to translate into my sex life, because it didn't matter how much like law of attraction and manifestation and mindset work and even health, fitness, nutrition, all of that. It didn't matter how well I was doing over there. When the hot guy came in the room that I really wanted to fuck, I was a 14-year-old girl again. And I didn't know how to do it. And so I put the spotlight on my sex and started a journey. And that led me into kink and tantra and BDSM and unconventional relationship structures and styles. And so I had an exploratory phase that wound up turning into a community, a blog, a podcast, and a career.
Is anybody in this group happen to be in her Facebook group, formerly known as the Kaleidoscope? Randall, cool, awesome.
Yeah,
he said something in the
yeah.
text.
It's a very colorful story. That was the Cliff Notes version. But yeah, that's me. And we live in Austin now. We have a
2
wet
dogs.
noodle dog and a bulldozer pit bull who's downstairs snoozing on the couch. So.
Isn't this chick awesome? She is so hot inside and out.
They just met me. So
I'd fuck her, and I do.
So there's our relationship in a nutshell.
Yep. And I'll go now. If you haven't gathered, I'm an unapologetic, conscious-ish bro. That's very much my vibe. Like, I love being kind of politically incorrect, a little edge-pushing, playful bro. I love just everything that comes with that, and a healthy dose of consciousness around it. So I'm not just a fuck boy, at least not most of the time. I'm aware of my actions and desire to do better always. So a bit of my background, I was born in Southern California, grew up mostly in Ohio, but spent summers back in Southern California. So I had these two very different worlds of California cookie cutter kind of upbringing, very strong Christian influences. My grandparents were pastors of a charismatic church with like holy laughter, slaying in the spirit, talking in tongues, dancing, interpretive dance stuff, really expressive like that. And then in Ohio, single mom, partied a lot, drank, worked a lot, wasn't around. My house was the house where a lot of firsts happened. A lot of the first sexual experiences, first time drinking, first time huffing gas. That was a thing we did a lot. Weird, killed many brain cells. And then moved back to California full-time with the high school in Orange County, which was a huge culture shock, going from a small Midwest town to then Orange County, Real Housewives kind of vibe. Went to college at San Diego State. I was in a fraternity, Sigma Chi.
I bet no one figured that.
Shocker.
Shocker.
You can take the boy out the frat, can't take the frat out the boy. And I had an incredible experience. Certainly plenty of shadow, like there's stereotypes for a reason in fraternity. And there's a lot of incredible, certainly like life and business training and amazing brotherhood, rites of passage, initiations, ritual stuff that I was like, I didn't know existed. And it had just such a huge impact on my life, especially transitioning from essentially boyhood to manhood or young adulthood maybe. And then after that, I was kind of chasing the high of what was the next season and container for that kind of connection. Certainly in the context of brotherhood, but just in intimacy and relationships in general. And so from there, had my sort of quarter life crisis, if you will, was working a corporate marketing job, putting my degree to good use, or so I thought. And then I was like, I knew something had to change. So I sold everything I owned, started living out of my car with my pit bull Biggie, who's our dog son right now. He's almost 10, or he just turned 10. That's a trip. And that's when I really sort of the big hero's journey of my life began. I started working with a company called Bulletproof. You might be familiar with Bulletproof Coffee, lifestyle brand nutrition company. And that was really my like gateway to personal development, was going to retreats and festivals and personal development health stuff all throughout the world, and was just exposed to so many amazing things. And in that journey, just became a personal development junkie, attending a lot of these things and facilitating them, getting really deep into men's work. Now I do a lot of my own men's work and men's groups. And then I met this woman, this one right here, this hot tamale. And I'll quickly jump into like our little love story, and that'll segue us into the grass-fed beef and organic sweet potatoes of this experience. So
just so you know, he is 100% like this 100% of the time. Exactly like this. People ask me that all the, I don't want to say all the time, but every now and then, like, are you guys really this like, fun and quirky? And is he really always like that? And the answer is yes. This will turn off and he will stay this way.
We're a good balance. I'm like the open light one. She's more of the dark closed shitty one. No, I'm kidding.
That's a lie. This is a manifesting generator. Manifester. I need things to slow down and calm down and be quiet every now and then. And he's just like, people all the time.
She's my balance.
Which plays a role into how we make things work, because it does take effort to make this magic happen.
So quickly about our connection and love story. We've been together for a little over 3 years. Like she mentioned, we're getting married later this year, Halloween weekend here in Austin. She's wearing a black wedding dress, if that doesn't tell you something. And I'm going to be wearing a light one, like a teal one. So I slid into her DMs. That's how I bagged this one right here.
You're just great with your adjectives.
I know. So I actually sent her a Facebook voice note message with a freestyle rap. And I've never done something like this before, but I felt this intense energy in my body. And I fancy myself someone who keeps their feet firmly planted in the ground and head way up in the clouds. And this was one of those like inspired action, courageous moments. And I was kind of creeping her from afar online for a few months, many mutual friends, hot tatted up chick talking about sex, like, okay, I see you. And I sent her a silly rap that was something like, Alexa, I'm about to flex for you. I want to stand next to you. And she played it not too long ago, and I cringe I'm like, oh my God, that's weird and embarrassing. And I'm like, good on you, bro. Former version of myself. Awesome. And there's so many like fun little synchronicities around our story, but I'll spare you some of those details and just share that we went hard and fast from there on. Fools rush in. I really love that idea. And a few FaceTime dates later, a few weeks later, I flew from California to New Orleans to meet her in person, told her I loved her that weekend and that I'm all in, and the rest is history. And here we are.
And then we properly fell in love at Envision Festival about a month later. That was our second date, was at Envision Festival, and our honeymoon will be Envision 2022.
Which is a transformational music festival in Costa Rica. I see some people that are probably going. Awesome. Celebrate with us. Awesome.
Yeah, I tell the story of us getting together very differently.
Well, you want to give him your version?
No, I think your version is great and adorable, but I was very like, who is this guy? Who is this guy with abs? You know, I'm surrounded by my mom and my sister. It was the lead up to Mardi Gras in New Orleans. So he arrived the weekend, I believe it was the weekend before Mardi Gras, which is on a Tuesday. And my family rides and parades. We've been in South Louisiana for over 300 years. So the roots are very, very deep. And I'm just like, who is this California boy, you know, sliding in my DMs? I'm like, fine, whatever. What does he want? And I played this thing, and then I played it for my family. I'm like, you have to hear this. And they're like, well, are you going to respond? And I'm like, yeah, at some point. Like later that night, we played a little bit of the game, but we also took a vacuum to the game very early on.
Amen.
Because both of us were in a place where we had gone through a heartbreak not too long before we connected. And through the heartbreak, I think each of us individually really came to terms with what we wanted in relationship, and how we wanted to show up in partnership, and what we were available for. For me, how I wanted to be communicated with, the ways that I was vowing to myself to communicate and show up and be present with my partner. Because before it was more like, I'm doing this, I'm sexually liberated young woman, I can have what I want, I can do as I please. And then when I was rocked by heartbreak that I didn't see coming, I was like, whoa, it's time to get really real with what I want and how I want this to go down. So we vowed to do it differently than we'd done it before. And, he mentioned single mom. My mom also, when I grew up, single mom, but had been married 5 times. So I only understood that relationships have an end. And when one reaches their expiration date, you say, see ya, and you just get another one. So he was the first time where I was not going to let any of those patterns and the things that I saw growing up play out. So, and we, over the last 3 years, that's nothing like somebody's relationship who's made it through grief and loss and babies and, 10, 15 years of a relationship. We understand that we're at 3 years. And I think that the way that we do our relationship is still very unique. And we have people who are, after grief, after loss, after babies, 10, 15 years, coming to us saying, can you help us? So we understand where we're at, and we understand that there's maybe limitations to what we do because we still have so much life to live together. And there's some things that I think that we do really well.
Yes.
So we're going to share one of them with you.
I'm delusional enough to think that this is built to last. At least we're pretending like it is. And it fucking is, make no mistake. And that kind of brings us into this idea of the relationship board meeting. I like to say relationship because it's like real. It's not just going through the motions. It's dynamic. It's living. It's alive. The origin of that, it was, I guess we were a couple years into our relationship and things were going good, had its ups and downs and all arounds, but we felt like there was just something deeper that was missing, a layer of intentionality that could take us to the next level, because we found that we were so busy in life, a bunch of amazing things going on, but it was like our relationship cup was oftentimes left empty. And it's like, that's not going to work. That's not a sustainable strategy. So what can we do about this? And we had a couple close friends. We have this incredible crew of what I call the Conscious Couples Coalition here in Austin. It's 12 of us. And we just so support one another. We each have men's groups and women's groups. And we just trade a lot of notes with kinds of stuff in our relationship that works. And one of these was this idea of a board meeting, relationship board meeting. And the concept is, what if we were to treat our relationship like the most important business of our lives and something that is built to last, that is profitable for decades, for a generation, for generations to come. And once we started looking at our relationship through that lens, it was like, oh, our expenses are outweighing our income in a lot of ways.
This is a lot of metaphor.
A lot of metaphor.
And in actuality.
Yeah. And so we're like, okay, so let's take a step back from all this and it's like, look at our relationship at a high level and as a business and the various buckets and functions of a business, and have some intentionality around making those as optimal as possible. And so through that journey, this structure created, and she has an incredible like PDF document that can take you through the whole thing. And
I just shared it.
You did. Perfect.
I just shared it. We got asked so many times about this thing that my team and I made a PDF on it, and I just shared it with y'all. So
yeah. And so that's like the origin story. And then from there, it's like, we talked about the why and then the what and how. I want to dig into that a little bit and just like
why, the what, and how.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in our relationship, we made these vows to do it differently. However, we were still going to play out some similar patterns. The pattern that I found myself in is that I would get into a relationship. My identity would merge and mesh with his identity. My friends were his friends. My life became his life. My favorite color was his favorite color. My favorite food was his favorite food. And then when the relationship would end, I would be left with, who the fuck am I? And so I didn't want this kind of merging attachment. And I wanted to maintain. I had spent a number of years really finding myself. I wanted to stay found. I didn't want to get into a relationship and then lose, and to me, at least, that's what I thought, like I was going to lose who I had just recently discovered that I am. And I wanted to stay, I wanted to keep things that I had recently discovered in myself, and then figure out how to have the individuality, the sovereignty, and the autonomy, and also be a really deeply committed, loving, present partner. And so I didn't know how to undo some of the patterns until I was in the midst of it and could have that next level of self-awareness. And so it was really through the doing and going, this is crunchy as fuck, man. I found myself in this place that I really didn't want to go. I didn't really want to go to again. And how do I, unravel it and pull it apart so that I can piece it together in the way that I actually want it to be. And it was challenging at first. Something that we pride ourselves on, I think, is our level of communication and the way that we articulate and the way that we can convey what we are really, truly feeling from sensation to high level concept. I'm proud of us, I think, for the work that we have done in that realm. And then there were some things that when under the umbrella of communication, we just simply weren't communicating about. Because we didn't have a time or a space to talk about it until it was in the moment and shit was going sideways. You scared both of us. Exactly. It goes exactly like that. And so when we moved to Austin from New Orleans, and we started this Conscious Couples Coalition with some of our best friends now, and they talked about, there was one couple in particular, I actually just recently interviewed them for my podcast. So we'll hear the whole origin story of all of this pretty soon if you'll listen to the show. But Andrew and Libby, they were talking about how every week they meet and they do this board meeting thing. And every week they meet and they do ritual together. One is more logical, structure oriented, the life, the humaning. And then the other is the more ethereal, otherworldly, magical, sex and orgasmic connection, ritual experience, like manifest with your orgasm kind of experience. So each week, or something like that, each week, they will do that. And then we had, now I don't know if they would have used that language when they first described it, but that's what I give it now, because many of the couples have extrapolated on that and made their own version of it. So with the relationship board meeting, it was an opportunity for us to sit down with our calendars and go, what are you doing? What are you doing? What do you want to do? What happened last week? Is there anything left unsaid? Are you a red, a yellow, or a green? What are you feeling? Are you green? Are you excited about this? Are you ovulating? Are you a red? Are you in your autumn season? Or do you want to light the house on fire? So an opportunity to talk about those things through the relationship board meeting. Jordan now is very present with my cycle. And I really believe that a partner who's in a heteronormative style relationship, male, female, anyone who's in a partnership with someone who has a cycle, if you pay attention to it, you will win.
it makes such a difference.
You win at a lot of things in your life.
Uh-huh.
And I also think that through that, you have cultivated a lot more reverence for what my body does cyclically and what it will do, because you're very present with it. And it's fascinating, instead of this like fighting against it, like, oh, are you bleeding? We can't have sex this week. It's just like, that's what I grew up with. Like, so selfish and not present. So through relationship board meeting, he's been able to pay attention to those things. We've been able to talk about things that we want to try, adventures we want to go on. We talk about movement and activity and getting into our bodies, because both of us work from home. I am the hermit. It's manifester, 6'2", role model hermit. I am happy to be a role model on this screen, and then I will retreat into a cave, like an actual cave. So, and then Jordan is role model opportunist. So he is just like a fluttering butterfly all of the time. So this allows for both of us to get our fixes. So where does the social time come into play? Where does my separate, private recharge time come into play? Do you maybe want to sleep in the extra bedroom a couple of nights this week, or one time this week?
Wow.
You know, things like that, where it's just like, instead of in the moment when the seeds of resentment are starting to take root and we're just trying to brush it under the rug, this is an opportunity to talk about it in the light of day and from a place of love. So
yes, well said.
Yeah,
love all that. And so it's dynamic, ever evolving and changing. Typically we have the same day, same time, not always, but it's usually every Sunday, actually a couple hours after this. And on the low end, it can be like an hour, and sometimes it's many hours. It just kind of depends. And sometimes we'll even like take a little season off, like a week or two, or even a few, because we find that this structure is actually not supporting us in this little snippet season slice of life. And I think that's awesome. And at first, because it was so amazing at first when we started this, and for several months, it was just like an up-leveling.
That's how we keep our shit together.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. And then it felt like something was changing, like it wasn't working as well as it had anymore.
No, I had major resistance.
She had such big resistance. So I was like, well, I thought we decided this was important and this was great. It was so awesome. Why is it not anymore?
And I like sit down and he'd be like, well, do you want to talk about the calendars? And at that time, even saying the word calendar, it made me want to like my brain explode. Like I just had so much going on that picking up my phone and looking at my calendar literally brought me to tears. I have this joke that I have to cry 4 tears every time we do it. So it doesn't come with like, oh my gosh, yes, let's get our crayons and the things, and we'll like Post-its and we'll put on music and drink wine, do our board meeting. Sometimes it's like in the living room while the sun is nice and bright, and by the time the sun has set, it's dark and our living room's like a cave, and I'm crying, and we're just like, did we make any progress? And the answer is yes.
Always. And that's part of the process, because the resistance is the breakdown before the breakthrough. There's something there that wants to be uncovered and moved and processed between us. It's not just random. There's something, a juicy little nugget there to explore and open up. Where else do we want to go from this? I think like we have a shared calendar. So like to get like very practical and logistical about it.
You don't need to have a shared calendar.
You don't have to, but I think it's great. It's called jordandoesalexa@gmail.com. Don't email us there because
you can
answer it. You can, I guess.
Email us.
And so literally we'll start injecting things on our calendar based on like what the week looks like. So we'll share like what commitments we have. Okay, you have women's group, I have men's group. I have basketball game this night. You have something going on this other night.
Or in like, oh, you have a masterclass Tuesday at this time.
Cool.
Guess what happens during master classes? I am stressed and I'm holding a lot of energy all day until I deliver. And then there's usually a sales process at the end of that. And so I'm tracking a lot, very in a masculine mode. I'm very hyper focused. And so to get out of the masterclass and he's cooking dinner and he's taking care of like me, giving me space, creating some space. He's not instructing me or anything. He's just creating an environment where I can surrender and relax. Feels so good. And he can prepare for that if we talk about it.
And the invitation is for me to be quiet as fuck the entire day while she's doing these things and just make her bulletproof coffee and superfood smoothies and dinner and just love on her. And
yeah. And I'm like an angry cat and like You know, he's just like, here's your smoothie. And I'm like, get out. No, that's not true. He comes, he gives me kisses, all the things. And then, you know, if y'all haven't guessed it, you know, our dynamic is I run a business. I mean, we both have our things that we do, but together we run Sex and Love Co. But before Sex and Love Co. became something both of us were paying attention to, it was my baby. And I had lots of clients at any given time. I felt like I was holding container for so many different people. I was the one that, you know, the coach that was showing up for just about everyone and not creating space to be held myself. Definitely leaning towards that masculine energy. And I, along with a lot of people, a lot of women specifically that make their way to me, they resonate with that. And I get to choose to create environments and do the work in order to surrender and find my feminine flow. And I can't expect for him to show up and coax it out of me. Granted, there are some things that we have developed that help to get me there and help me to transition. But that is definitely something that is present in our relationship, is this kind of hyper masculine at times. I also have high T. And you know what? It's like both our dicks are out and we can't make love. So
Doesn't
both
work.
of us, for us, you know,
Playing swords with our hard dicks doesn't get us
Stop it.
anywhere. And it's a lot of fun, but except it's
I mean,
not.
that doesn't work for us. Maybe that works for some others, but that just doesn't work for us. So creating opportunities for, you know, for myself to choose to surrender, relax, let go, and for him to step up and go, I got you, babe. Everything's taken care of.
I think that's actually a great segue into one of the key buckets of this relationship board meeting experience, which is sex. So sexpression, sexploration, and creating a very intentional space for that to happen throughout the week. And I remember like when I was first exposed to this idea of scheduling sex, so much resistance came up.
Like, that's what you do when you're on the way out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's the same thing as like having a relationship coach. We have an incredible relationship coach. Y'all might even be familiar with her, Annie Lala, Annie and Evan. They're incredible. And I remember like when some of our friends had a relationship coach, like, oh, well, what's wrong? It's like, well, no, nothing's wrong. Well, there's some things, but like, we're actually pretty good, but we want to be fucking great always. And so like, okay, I'm getting on board with that. And this is one of those kind of things too. It's like, all right, yeah, like our sex life is good. And I want it to be great always and just continuing to always get better.
And great doesn't mean that we're having high frequency.
It doesn't
means that the quality of our connection and the quality of our connection is really high, and we both feel expressed. And sometimes that doesn't look like crazy, kinky, wild scenes, but it can look like that. And if either one of us are feeling like that's what we desire, then we want to create a space to have that happen. Again, those seeds of resentment, they take root, you know, brushing that under the rug kind of thing. And then it's all of a sudden you've got a resent tree. You know? How did that get there?
And it never ceases to amaze me. Like if the kind of tipping point is 3 to 5 days, if it's been 3 to 5 days without us having sex, let alone like a week, and that's not often, but like when that has happened, even if like it seems like our life is pretty good and our relationship is generally good, things happen that are inexplainable that like breaks us apart. And then I find that if the more we're having sex, the less of those things come up. It's just like such a strong correlation there. And so that's why we have this be such an important part of this experience, is to schedule sex.
And to schedule it and to talk about it.
And to talk about it, yeah.
You know, like what's coming up. Our relationship coach, Annie Lala, who's amazing, she uses the phrase, your relationship needs to fuck. It's not about either of you, but through the sex comes the exhale, and I'll put my swords down. And I remember why I chose you, and we're in this together. And for some people, sex, the actual act of sex might not be an accessible thing for them. And so it's some level of skin to skin contact, body to body, breathing, eye gazing, touching, loving intimacy. If you can even just cultivate the sexual energy, not necessary to have a hard dick and a wet pussy, but if those things are present, then awesome. But that, I'm just throwing that out there because for some people that's not accessible. And if that's not accessible, it's not an excuse.
Ooh, yes. And what I'm reminded of in this moment is the Esther Perel quote of like, if you want to have more sex, have more sex.
Or have sex.
Yeah,
if you want to have more sex, have sex. Yes.
And with this element, this aspect of our relationship board meeting, we found that we have more sex, or we have just more like intimacy in general, that it goes beyond just like a good conversation.
Yeah, well, every time he touches me, I don't have, and this is something that's been present in relationships previously, and I speak to a lot of clients and a lot of community members that feel this. When he touches me, I don't immediately think he's going to make an advance to sex. So I don't immediately put a guard up, like, I'm not in the mood, I'm feeling bloated, I'm really cranky, rah, 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 or whatever the thing is. Like, I just did XYZ in the house. Well, that's a lie, because you do the house things.
Yeah, I do. I'm the house daddy.
The house daddy.
House daddy.
We function because of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been in relationships before where every time I was touched, rubbed, petted, or shown love, I interpret it as you're going to try to advance to sex. And so like shut down, and then there would wind up being almost no intimacy. And that's not what either party wanted either. But I was oftentimes with men who only understood intimacy as sex, because hugs and touches and kisses and that kind of thing was seen as you're not acceptable for a young boy. But what was seen as acceptable as an adolescent was porn. And that's when you can get touched and you can have sex, or that you can, have skin to skin and all of that. And so it's like, oh, that's not okay, but this is okay. So really, I want intimacy, and the only way that I know how to get there is through the portal of sex. So, there's a lot of re-education, re-educating and rewiring, let's say, the thought patterns. So when we talk about it during our relationship board meeting, I don't anticipate every touch. I can just give intimacy in the moment. I can just give hugs. I can just give kisses and not feel the pressure.
And a couple great examples, like very practical ones in this umbrella of intimacy and this part of our relationship board meeting is we have king and queen worship, or god and goddess worship, whatever terms tickle your fancy.
Vampire.
That's weird. And so every other week we'll rotate, like this week's king, next week is queen. And that experience, like sex is not the expectation. Oftentimes it happens, more often than not, but it's completely okay if it doesn't. The idea behind that experience, so if it's queen worship, for example, I create an experience for her to drop into. And that can involve like a 30, 60 minute or so full body massage with like essential oils and CBD massage stuff, and just like a whole thing with candles and music. Maybe I like take her through a breathwork experience. Maybe I draw her a bath. It can be any number of those kinds of things where it's like, she's my fucking queen and I'm exalting and like worshiping her. You like that, huh?
Devotion.
Devotion, yes.
This is a devotion moment.
And oftentimes that creates a reverence and like an energy where sex does happen, and sometimes not. And like, that's totally okay. It's not a failure.
Because I have a thing to do right behind it.
Totally. And so it might just be like energizing for you to get into that. And then vice versa with king worship, similar types of things.
Rarely doesn't end in sex.
Yeah. And I think it's super important to like have that be like, hey, we don't have to have sex. The expectation is not that we're going to, because maybe that's just like not where we're at, and we don't even get there in that experience, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean we're not going to still be intimate and have that level of depth and connection. And similar to that, we have sexploration. So we'll schedule a sexploration in our week or every couple weeks, and that can be us watching like an instructional sex kind of video. So we have a close friend of ours, Kenneth Play. He has this incredible, what I call conscious porn. Maybe there's a better way to call it, but he has
sex ed and porn made a baby.
Yes, exactly. And so he has these incredible modules that are super sexy and super instructional. And sometimes we'll just watch a few of those and we'll get inevitably turned on. And sometimes that leads to sex, and not always. So sexploration, that is like a type of intimacy where we do something a little different. We're learning, we're trying something a little different with one another. So the expectation is like, we know that we're like, there might be some fun comfortability. There might be some awkwardness. We're trying something that we haven't really done before. So like, there's that implicit grace of like, this might be a little clunky, and like, we're prepared for that. And that's more than okay. Like, there's a safe space to not play it safe in that regard.
And a mantra that I have for those experiences is, there's two. There's an internal dialogue that says, how do I make him win?
Ooh, that's good.
And everything he does is right.
Hmm.
Because the alternative is hypercritical and no one wins then.
But then I'm super emasculated. That sucks.
Yeah.
I feel like a loser. I feel like I can't do it right. And neither of us want
Yeah,
that.
it's how do I, she said, was the first one? How do I make him win? I want him to win. How do I cheer my person on? Because like I said, first one maybe king worship, but the alternative is something that I experienced in previous relationships, at times in this one, and a lot of, again, clients and community is, well, I don't like it when he does this because it's just not right and he doesn't touch it this way. And there's like this it's all on him and he's not doing it right. And I'm like, well, how do I create an environment where everything he is doing is right? Like, how do I need to show up for everything to be going and flowing really smoothly? It's way more fun to have sex with someone who's into it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And like you can debrief about like the ins and outs of like preferences, but in the moment, yeah, like, and this is, I think the concept, this came from a mentor of ours, Om Rapani, which is like and this BDSM and Tantra is like kind of his domain. And it was the concept of like, make your Dom, like be rooting for your Dom. So if you know DS dynamics, Dom and submission, maybe that's triggering for some people. Maybe it's really hot for others.
Someone is the leader and someone is being led.
Perfect. Great way to put it. And the idea is that like the person that's being led is trusting the leader and like rooting for them. Their energy is such that they're open and like want them to succeed and be right. Which if you've ever been in a situation where that's not the case, it fucking sucks. It doesn't feel good on either side. And
pleasure doesn't live there.
No, it doesn't. So, yeah, that's not to say that things can't come up and opportunities to like grow and do better and understand each other more. And that's where the debriefing comes.
Yes. And in the debriefing and what I'm about to share, and then I think maybe we go into some Q&A.
Perfect. Yep.
And in the debriefing, whether that's your debriefing post sex, so the best times to talk about sex are not when you're actually going to have it. Save it. Do that like during the board meeting or over tea at 2 on a Tuesday, that sex is not, at a cafe or something. Like talk about it at these other times.
Neutral territory.
Yes, because stuff can come up. Not that it always will, but it can. And it's kind of hot to be turned on at a cafe having
Fuck
tea.
yeah, it is.
When you debrief, I get this in a lot of more spiritual, conscious kind of environments and community. I hear this radical honesty. And I think that in relationship, the term and what it can mean isn't helpful. There are some things that he doesn't need to know. And I'm not going to tell him. I'm going to tell my best girlfriends, and I'm going to process it out, and I'm going to choose my highest self in it. And then I'm going to bring that to him after it's been considered, after I feel connected to the thing, when I feel like I'm really choosing how I really truly feel and not just saying things that are in the moment and that maybe hurt little Alexa is really saying. So grounded honesty. So grounded honesty for me as whether I want to use my profile, my human design or whatever, sometimes I need a little time. Sometimes I need a little space, and to probe me and ask me in a moment when I'm already on the edge of, I think I need a little space for this, will 100% of the time create an environment where I say something mean.
She can be ruthless.
There is for sure light and shadow to that. So just throwing that out there is, if that's like a thing that maybe your North Star is like, just be always honest all the time. Being in a relationship up to this point and knowing where our relationship is going, we have found so much value from coming to each other and sharing from a place that's not just saying any little thing that's on our mind or that's coming up for us, but to really be very intentional with how that is shared. And so we use grounded honesty. And we consider, yes. And the biggest things that have helped, I believe, the both of us is close, really high quality friends.
Yeah.
Really, really high quality friends.
They are my therapists, not her.
Yeah. and we have a coach. that helps too.
Good support.
So, anybody Seinfeld people? Anybody watch Seinfeld? Well, I'm just gonna keep that to myself. The airing of the grievances on the Festivus, the day before Christmas Eve, the 23rd. Anyway,
even people that don't watch Seinfeld, I think some.
My family will do that. Something will come up and it's gonna say it sounds like a grievance, and they go, "Oh, keep it for Christmas, keep it for Festivus," because we have a period of time where you air your grievances, and it's very playful. And they make little lists, and they kind of like tag, they like keep it from each other, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna put that on the list," and then. And then it'll be December 23rd, and they'll pull out their lists. We'll watch Seinfeld, and we will air grievances by a metal pole. Anyway.
Cool. So we'll maybe shut the fudge up for a hot second and answer some questions. I saw that there is definitely some in the chat thread. So we have about 10 minutes to address some of these. This is the first one I saw from Jessica. What if it doesn't? I think there's one maybe before that. Okay. I feel like I've heard you answer this question really well in the past. How do we support giving feedback if things aren't feeling good
in the moment?
Yeah, and like what if it doesn't feel good or you're not getting pleasure?
Sure. I think some is support maybe outside of the moment, and some is in the moment. Outside of the moment, and I don't know if this is like a specific, I'm just going to riff for a second.
Cool.
My favorite place to start is sensations in my body. I'm going to share something that's vulnerable. I've got fears. I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid he's going to be mad at what I say. I'm afraid of XYZ. I'm just going to say it. Like there's no amount of personal growth and development that's just going to suck my fears away. So like, I'm going to be honest with myself. Okay, these are the things. What are the potential outcomes? This goes sideways. What could happen? So what that brings up in me, maybe a quickened heart rate, maybe sweaty palms, maybe shortness, maybe like some tension in my throat. So I'll show up and I'll say, I'm going to start with what I'm experiencing inside of my body. I'm experiencing this. These are the sensations. I have these fears. I am afraid that I'm going to share this thing and you aren't going to really listen to me, or that you're going to take this thing personally, and you list those things when really what I really want to do is connect with you. And if it's okay, I would like to share some things with you while you listen. And then when I'm done, not before, then when I'm done, I would love to hear how that feels for you. Or what you think, feeling, thinking. So
yeah, so that's like incredible for outside of the moment. And then in the moment, well, there's a couple things. Like another one outside of the moment is want, will, won't. She has this incredible list, this like experience, much like the relationship board meeting. It's a very like great complementary activity, is with a partner. What do you want? What will you do if the other person wants it? And what is a hard no? What won't you do? When we first did this a few years back, it was like a 3-4 hour experience that was like awesome and awful, and ended up with us having incredible connected sex. That was what we both wanted. And so that's another great tool to be clear on like what you both want, so that in the moment of sexual intimacy, there aren't any like yellow flags or just like hiccups. There still might be, but like there's just more clarity and understanding on both sides. And I have found for me, like when Alexa has in the moment of intimacy given me like an instruction of what she likes. So it's like if something's happening that she doesn't really like all that much, it's kind of like shifting the energy into like what she prefers or what she likes. It's not like, ooh, I don't like that, or stop doing that. That can't, I mean, if sometimes that is appropriate. But
wrong hole.
Exactly. In a certain situation, maybe that's important to like a hard stop kind of a thing. But I have found that it feels really good. And I get it when she says, can you do it more like this? I really like it when you do this.
Right, so the right side is the best side.
Yes, it is. I've learned that. It's taken me many times to learn that, but yes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like, instead of coming from like a negative angle, it's more of like the positive. What do you want? You know what I really love? It's great. Yes, it's great. Cool.
And if we create an environment for the sexploratory kind of experience where I might pull out some of the toys or create a unique experience that we haven't gone through before, it's with the understanding that there's going to be feedback.
Yeah.
So I really like trying something out where we know there's going to be feedback because we're there to learn. It's not really, we're not showing up there for it to be sexy. Should we get the feedback right and we're playful and lighthearted about it, then, and we realize, okay, so this is something we really do want to incorporate in some of our other experiences, then we can go from there. I can't just audit, you know, like there's some things that I have experienced in my sex life before Jordan and I got together, that in communicating about who we are and our identities here and all of that, that he has not tried before. And there's so many concepts that were brand new to him when we first got together. And there's this idea, right, that you can have sex with 1,000 different people one way, or you can have sex with one person 1,000 different ways. I want that. I want to have 1,000 different ways sex with this one. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't want to also touch somebody else's genitals at some point, or somebody's going to play with us at some point. But I want to have lots of deep, varied types of sexual experiences personally. And I think that me showing up in this relationship, that was the first time that you had someone that was saying those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
And so I get to co-create experiences with him where he gets to learn some of those things, because where else is he going to learn them? And if he goes, if, you know, imagine the vulnerability it takes for him to take a toy over there, maybe when we first got together, because it's just toys over there in the
You
corner.
can probably see it, yeah.
Yeah, and a flogger hanging on the door. To take something there that he's never yielded before, because you have to say yield. He's never yielded before. And then there's me, who does this for a living, that's laying on the bed. Like, I imagine that in your head, it's like, she's going to know I'm holding it wrong. I'm already fucking up. And it's an energy. It's not about the toy. It's about the energy required in order to make the toy hot. And that's confidence, which means repetition and actually doing it at times. And knowing that, like, it's not going to be hot and it's not going to bring that much pleasure. But what's your definition of pleasure in that moment? That it's going to feel good in your body, that it's going to give you an orgasm, or that you are connecting with your partner and that's pleasurable, that you are both committed to growing in your sex life, that's pleasurable. So just some reframes, I think, for that.
That's great. Cool. I don't know if there's any other questions. I definitely have seen some great comments and feedback and ahos, so to speak. A couple quick things I'll say that came up just throughout this conversation that we didn't necessarily explicitly talk about, some aspects of our relationship that have really supported me and us. One is the erotic blueprint. Highly recommend taking that quiz. It's the love languages for sexual expression and intimacy. And oh my God, when we did this early on in our relationship, it set the foundation for like everything and just brought so much clarity to like who we are and how we show up in sexual intimacy. And just to give you a quick example, so there, like I said, the love languages for sexual experiences and intimacy, my top two were her bottom two, and vice versa. My bottom two were her top two. And so it was like, on the one hand, I was like, oh shit, we are sexually incompatible. This thing is doomed. We should just get out and quit while we're ahead. But I didn't really think that. There's definitely some of that came up, but more of what came up, having this kind of personal development, self-help junkie mindset, was like, awesome. Our ceiling is really fucking high. Our opportunity for growth and deeper intimacy is huge. And being committed to that and working through that process of what it'll take to get there is a lifelong journey that I'm like so grateful to have. So that's one that I would so recommend checking that out. Certainly just for yourself. And if you have a partner, like seeing what comes up for them and just having a little bit of education around that, I think will create a lot of clarity and potentially hot experiences for y'all to have. Yeah, cool. I'll leave that there. Any other questions before I continue to ramble? Because I can do that. Let's see. Yeah, erotic blueprint. Yep. Miss Jaya. Super good. Yeah, so we got a couple minutes. If any questions want to come up.
Do you think that y'all will do, sorry, little. So the dog is still in my lap. She's very cute. Do you think y'all will do relationship board meeting? How many of you are solo? Do you think there's a way that you could do a board meeting with yourself? Yeah. Please do it. Get into that habit, get into the flow, and bring that into your next relationship. Prepared, saying, I want these things. I desire this level of communication right from the onset. It makes a huge difference, I think, and sets an incredible bar. Check-ins with yourself. How was this
Absolutely.
past week? Did I do things in a fulfilling way? How can I sex myself? Because you're still human,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
Because he looks like your mom.
I know. It's great.
Yes. Well, cool. So I put a handful of things that we mentioned on inside of the chat. Like if he mentioned something and we have a resource for it, I threw it into the chat. So I don't know if Chelsea, you were catching those things, but thatsexchick.com/resources. My most recommended resources are all on that list, including sex toys and secret sexuality tools and PDFs, worksheets that you can go through and all that good stuff. And then also the Sex Hacker Pro course, which is the sex ed porn info, I think is really cool. That's a type of sex education I will never do. So I'm a big fan of Kenneth EM or Kenneth Play and his work. So, and the Google Doc. I love Google Docs. All right. Well, any other questions?
And with that,
We're
complete.
We're in.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being speakers on our clubhouse too. You guys have been to like everything. You're amazing. I truly appreciate you. And I got so much out of the first one. And I remember coming out of that first session like a year ago. You guys had a framework and I was like, okay, I'm going to implement this into my life. And I actually like ended up going through this whole thing about like how important all of these things were and like reframed what I wanted in a relationship. But because I didn't enter a long-term partnership, I had forgotten a lot of the things that you said. So I love what you said at the end of like, do this with yourself, like implement it with yourself. Because now coming back here, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. I remember all the things I was going to do a year ago. And now I can just do them with myself, which is really beautiful. So thank you so much for all of your wisdom and for being here again. You're both amazing. Can we all take ourselves off mute and rub our hands together and give a big ashtahay?
You did a really great job, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Amazing! I love it. I love it.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Yes.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. All right. I see a Katie in the